Hello, everyone. Welcome. We will get started in just a moment. While everyone's rolling in, we're waiting to begin. Can everyone hear me all right? You can give me a thumbs up. You can say yes or no in the chat. Okay, sounds like you can hear me. Great. Okay. We will give it about 1 more minute and get started because we have a lot to cover today. Again, as everyone's rolling in, I would love to hear in the chat where you're from, what part of the world you're tuning in from, and what industry you're in. I will read off a few as we kick off. So let me know in the chat where you're from and what industry you're in. Okay, amazing. I see an NYC, education field. I'm also in NYC. Okay, Connecticut, legal. I see consulting. I see healthcare industry, nonprofit industry, corporate, collegiate. Amazing. Someone's tuning in from Brazil. Welcome. Someone's tuning in from the UK. Welcome. Canada, Israel. Lots of folks here from the US. Amazing. All right. Well, welcome. And let's go ahead and get started. Today's webinar is the new features webinar for August, where we'll be showing you all of the new and exciting features that we've released recently. My name is Emily. I'm a customer experience manager here at monday.com. And I'd also like to introduce my amazing colleagues, Katie and Amelia, who will be helping to answer your questions and moderating the chat throughout today's demo. So thank you, Katie and Amelia, for being here. So now that everyone's settled in, we know a little bit more about you all, where you're from and what industries you're in. I want to just say welcome, and let me go ahead and change my slide. So before we begin, you should be able to see my screen and hear me, but if that's not the case at any point during the presentation, please let us know by writing in the chat box so we can get it resolved as quickly as possible. Today's session will be made up of 2 parts. So first, we'll take a look at our new features in action, and then we'll move into a live Q&A session to answer your specific questions. We have a lot to cover today, so throughout the demo, please be sure to add your questions in the dedicated Q&A box at the bottom of the screen instead of the general chat. So you will see 2 different options at the bottom of your screen. One is a chat box that's more for general comments. The one beside it to the right will be the Q&A box where you can ask your specific questions. I will be pulling from the Q&A box only during our Q&A session, so please drop your questions there. Again, I will be pulling from the Q&A box during our Q&A session. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can, but that said, we do have a lot of new features and improvements to demo today. So if I don't get to your specific question, I apologize, but feel free to check out our support articles and our community forum, community.monday.com. As someone else has most likely already asked your question there and had it answered, or we have a knowledge base article about it already. And if not, you can reach out to us at support@monday.com as always. And finally, you will be emailed a recording of today's session within 3 business days, and we'll also be adding it to our monday.com/webinars page. So you can always go to monday.com/webinars. There's an on-demand tab, and that should be up within about 72 hours. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today's session. We'll be covering the left pane filter and search improvements, new notification controls, Kanban updates and improvements, calendar integration improvements, updates and improvements to the sub items, and email to board updates. That's all within the Monday work management product. And then at the end, we'll also be introducing you to our mobile CRM experience for those of you using the Monday Sales CRM product. Okay, amazing. So again, can everyone hear me and see my screen? Drop a yes in the chat if you can. And while we're doing that, I'm going to jump over to my monday.com account. Okay, great. So to start, I do want to note that each of the new features you'll see today have a wide variety of applications. For this session, we've decided to use the example of an events planning team, but I know we have a lot of super interesting industries with us. So don't worry if this isn't the exact same use case as yours. As I show the features in context, you'll be able to see how these updates will enhance your own workflows. Now, this is actually our new event planning template from our template center. So I added this by choosing from templates, going to the operations tab, and selecting this event management workflow, which includes a dashboard, an event planning checklist, which is a work doc, and then the boards that you'll see demoed today. So if you're looking to add this event planning workflow, you can find it here in the template center. Templates provide a nice foundation to get started, and they're fully customizable. But of course, we have lots of other boards available for different use cases, which is a great way to get started with our most popular workflows. I'm going to focus specifically on the event planning template board, this one right here, where you can plan, track, and manage a single event through kickoff, planning, and advertising the event. This use case is primarily project-based, so each event is a project. And the steps to complete that event or to get to that event are the tasks. And I'll be showing how the new features and improvements might be incorporated by a team working together to manage their tasks leading up to an event, i.e. the project. So again, all the features we'll be showing today can be used with any workflow. So now that we have that context out of the way, without further ado, let's dive into the new features we're rolling out. So first, we'll actually be looking at some features related to the left pane, this right here, and not the workspace, not the boards themselves. But left pane filters can now be saved separately for each workspace. So for those of you who are not familiar with Workspaces, this is the workspace I'm in right here, the new features webinar workspace. Workspaces are one way you can manage the boards in your account. Let's see if I can make my screen full screen. I have a couple of people asking about that in the chat. Let's see. Is this better? Okay, amazing. I see people saying yes, that's better. Sorry about that. Let's also zoom in a little bit. Okay. Can everyone see my screen a little better now? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's continue. So workspaces are great for dividing up boards and therefore your work by department, client, project, or however else you like to arrange them. My workspaces are arranged by my own personal workspace, my workspace where I do demos for clients, my workspace where I plan this new features webinar, and a couple of other, like the work forms workspace if you're using that feature, and then just an extra one here. That's personally how I have my workspaces divided. This allows for less clutter and easier navigation between workspaces to find the boards that you need. And you can switch between workspaces from the left pane drop-down menu at the top here. Now let's understand the new feature we're learning about today. So previously, if you set filters For example, these filters were applied to all the workspaces in your account. So I'm going to go ahead and set a filter as an example. Let's say that I want to filter to show main boards only. You'll see these two boards are private. So when I filter by main only, those two boards are going to go away, showing only main boards in the workspace. Previously, this caused friction because when you changed workspaces and expected to see boards or dashboards that were filtered out by a filter that you applied to a different workspace, there wasn't always understanding or alignment that the filters were still being applied. So for example, if I switched to Emily's workspace, that filter would still be applied and I would only be seeing main boards. But now if you set filters to a workspace, it will only apply to that workspace. And every workspace is able to save its own filter options. So when I change to my demos, now, for example, that filter is no longer applied and I'm seeing all boards. So back to the new features, webinar workspace, that filter is still applied. We also made sure to clean the left pane search term when moving between workspaces. So I'm going to remove this filter now and use the search feature instead. And I'm going to search the term planning. This will show my event planning checklist and my event planning board. And if I switch to my demos workspace now, that search term box is now cleaned, meaning that the term planning is no longer written in there, when in the past, when you switched workspaces, the term would still be in the search bar. Again, possibly causing confusion if your team suddenly feels like they're missing boards or thinking that your boards have been deleted. Okay, back to the new features webinar workspace. So moving on, but remaining in the left pane area, let's move over to our notification center. Our notification center is where we receive our notifications according to the settings we have configured in our profiles. So do you ever feel like you're getting too many notifications and you can't really sift through them, or you're getting notifications from boards that aren't relevant to you? Well, you can now mute notifications from certain boards. So this feature can be activated in monday.labs by clicking on your profile picture, clicking on monday.labs, search for board notifications. And right there, this board notification setting, go ahead and click activate. When enabled, you can mute notifications for a specific board. I'm going to go ahead and click refresh. This is another exciting improvement that many of you have been waiting for and asking for, frankly. You can now choose to mute the notifications from specific boards completely, or only get notified if you were mentioned or assigned. So back on a board, we'll go back to this event planning board. You can now click on the three dots menu, go to board notifications, and you will see three options. So if you choose mute all notifications, you will stop getting notifications and emails from this board. So please note, this only applies to the bell notifications right over here, as I just showed you in the notification center, and not the inbox, which is right here. You will still see the board notifications there in the inbox. But as I mentioned, they will no longer be bell notifications. You can choose to receive notifications only when you are mentioned and assigned in the people column or the owner column in this case, or receive all, meaning you'll receive all the board notifications. Great. So now let's move into our boards and start by explaining the structure we're going to be using for today's use case. So as we already mentioned, we're looking at an event planning board, and this board is structured so that each group essentially represents a phase within the event plan. And the items represent the tasks that will need to be completed within each phase. Excuse me. So cool, on to our first feature. For those of you who haven't come across the Kanban view before, this is a board view. This is a board view that is a great way to visualize tasks according to Kanban methodology. It shows tasks grouped by their status and then the relevant information associated within each task, such as the owner or the deadline. Tasks are represented as cards within each status. So like campaign week 4 is one card, vendor 1 is one card, vendor 2 is one card. And they're moved from list to list until completion when a task contains multiple steps. So such as approved to start, working on it, pending review, and done. Or it can simply show the current status when there are not multiple steps involved. Now, an improvement to this feature is that Kanban sort, or Kanban, I know some people say Kanban, some people say Kanban. I'm saying Kanban. Kanban sort is now available. We heard that many of you were tired of scrolling to the items that you most wanted to see in your Kanban view because previously they would just be arranged in one order. But now that hassle is over. From now on, you can sort Kanban cards by any column you choose. So you'll see that I already have one sort applied. I'm sorting by budget. Let's actually leave that sort and instead sort by end date, which is actually our due date. And you can do either ascending or descending. I'm going to do ascending in this case. And you'll see now that within each group, the end date is shown in order from earliest to latest. So we've got October 28th, November 1st, November 15th, December 12th, etc. And we can save that sort to this view. So now when I come back to here, it's always sorted within each status group by earliest to latest date. And again, as I showed, you can also sort by name, owner, budget amount, statuses, etc. One of the most popular reasons for sorting the Kanban view could be for prioritizing tasks due dates, like I just showed. So you can see the tasks with the closest due dates at the top. Kanban's drag and drop experience has also been improved. So previously when you dragged a list, you had to release it exactly on top of another list. Otherwise the swap didn't happen. So for example, you can move these cards. You can move their order. But again, it had to be dropped exactly right here or it wouldn't switch. But now, as you can see, well, it's actually not swapping. There we go. I think it's because I enlarged my screen a little bit so everyone could see a little better. But if your screen is at like 100% resolution, mine is a little more than that right now. It's a much more improved drag and drop experience. We've improved the flow and performance of this action. So now as long as the desired swap list is hovered over with the mouse, the swap will occur. So I'm actually going to zoom my screen out just a little bit so you can hopefully see this again in action a little better. There we go. That worked quite seamlessly. Thank you for your patience there. Okay, zooming back in. All right, and finally, in the past, when you selected the divide by group checkbox, there were some slow performance experiences. So let's go to settings, divide by groups. When this is selected, you now see more cards that are divided by group on the board. So back here, we have the kickoff, event sessions, vendors needed, and campaigns groups. On the Kanban view, these are now, as you can see, divided by kickoff, event sessions and topics, vendors needed, and campaigns for event. So we've improved this, and there's now a much smoother scroll experience. As you can see, I'm scrolling pretty seamlessly. In the past, that was not always the case. So we've made that performance improvement for you. All right. Next, let's move on to improvements in our calendar integration. So back on the main table, when working from the events planning board, the event manager might want to sync the due dates of their tasks within their calendar, whether they're using Google or Outlook. Many people work from their calendars when planning out their work days. I know I personally work from my Gmail calendar, G calendar. So having the important project dates also synced there is always helpful. For those of you who are not familiar with our calendar integration, as you can see here, I'll just go to add new integration. You can search for calendar. You'll see we have Outlook and Google integrations and recipes within those. This is set up by connecting your monday.com board with your Google or Outlook calendar. So using our integration, you can automatically add an event in your calendar each time an item is added to your board, and create items in your board from events added in your calendar. So we have kind of a two-way connection. So this one and this one, these are the Google Calendar recipes, but they are pretty much the same for the Outlook integration. So in previous versions of the calendar integrations, we required you to have two date columns, the start date and the end date. And they had to have start and end times added. So not only did it need to have the date, but you also had to add time. Here you'll see you can toggle on the time option. And if you didn't add times, an event would be created on your Google or Outlook calendar at just a default time. And there was some other missing logic if you added only one date. One second, I'm going to take a sip of water really quickly. Okay, thank you for bearing with me there. Okay, excuse me. So we've improved the logic of our calendar integrations, which we're hoping provides a much better experience for you. So here's the new logic, and bear with me. We're going to work through this together. We'll be here to help you. We can talk about this more in the Q&A at the end, but I'm going to show you just a couple of examples of the new logic and then breeze through a few of the other ones. There are 5 changes total in the new logic of the calendar integration. So the first one is when the start and end columns contain only dates with no times, an all-day event between the 2 dates will be created. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm going to create a new item. We'll call it Concept 5. And I'm going to set this date to October 2nd and this date to October 4th, but with no time added. So let's go to October 2nd, October 4th. And again, I did not toggle on the add time option. I did date only. Now let's jump over here to my calendar. An all-day event between these 2 dates should have been created. Let's see. Looks like it hasn't come through yet. All right. October 2nd through October 4th. I tried this like 10 minutes before the webinar started and it was working perfectly. Okay, I don't think it's going to show up for us right now. We'll check again in a few minutes, but an all-day event between September 2nd or October 2nd and October 4th will ideally be created. So you'll see, a blue bar there showing an event called concept 5 between the 2nd and the 4th. Okay. And let's see if this one will work. Let's add another date, concept 6. Another new logic is that if you provide only a start or end date that's the same day, again, an all-day event will be created for that date. So in this case, let's set the date to October 7th to October 7th. So again, no time added, but this is an event that's going to take place all day on October 2nd or 7th. Let's try this again. All right, I don't see it coming through, but again, we'll check in a few minutes. But ideally, an all-day event will be added for Friday, October 7th. Okay, 3 others that I'm not going to demo, but for the sake of time, and it's really for the sake of time, but now, of course, I know that these are kind of firing with a delay anyway. So one is that if you set the start date to a date only, so here's an example. The start date is only a date, but the end date includes a date and time. An event will be created for that day with 12 a.m. as the start time and the time you've selected as the end time. So 10 a.m. on September 1st would be the end time on the calendar. On the flip side, if you set the start date for the event with a date and time, so you'll see this has a date and time, but the end time is only a date, September 9th, the start time on the calendar will automatically be set to the nearest 30-minute rounded block before the end time. And finally, if you provide only a start time for the event and no end time at all, a 30-minute event will be created starting from the given start time, as you can see here. All right, so I know that was a lot. As I said, happy to walk through this again in the Q&A. We're happy to help if you reach out to support. And I believe this will be added to our knowledge base article as well. But again, this is to hopefully improve your experience using a calendar integration, because now there are more logic options instead of an event just being created at like a random default time. Okay, so moving on from the calendar integrations. Next, I'd like to highlight a couple of sub-item improvements. The sub-items, as many of you know, are constantly undergoing improvements, and we're excited to, walk you through these new ones. For those of you who don't use sub-items, they're a really great way to add an extra level of granularity to your workflow. So in our use case, we're using sub-items like subtasks, as some of the tasks are quite large and actually should be broken down into smaller parts using the sub-items. So for an example, I'm going to show the group event sessions and topics. We have session 1, session 2, and session 3. But within those sessions, we have the subtasks that we need to do to fully complete the session. So we need to brainstorm the session. We need to write a rough draft. We need to create a slide deck. We need to, run through the breakout session. All of these are smaller tasks within the larger task that will eventually contribute to the whole project. Now, sub-items have their own column structure, which is separate to the item level. So as you see, my columns in the parent item are like owner, start date, end date, budget, status, campaign channel, and the Google Calendar integration. Whereas in the sub-items, the column structure is just owner, status, due date, and a files column. So up until now, if a column in sub-items was deleted, you would be unable to restore it after the undo banner disappeared. So let's delete this status column. Delete, delete. So you'll see we have this green banner here that says column status deleted. This banner will show up for 30 seconds, I believe, where you can hit undo. But in the past, once that banner was gone, the sub-items column was gone. You could not restore it from your recycle bin. We know this caused you and your team huge frustrations and cost you, in some cases, valuable time and work that you'd already done. So from now on, you will be able to restore sub-item columns through the recycle bin. It'll be the same process as restoring columns, which were deleted up here on the item level. So let's go to my recycle bin. And there we see that I just deleted the column status from the board event planning, and it was at the sub-item level. I'm going to click restore. Back to my board. Let's check that out. And there it is. My status column in the sub-items is now restored. Additionally, we now allow moving an item with sub-items to a board without sub-items. So in the past, if you wanted to move a parent item, so session 1 in this case is the parent item, or the main item, and that item contained sub-items, you would first need to make sure that sub-items were created on the target board that you were moving it to, along with matching columns, so the item would move successfully. But what if you didn't have sub-items yet on the target board? Previously, you would receive a pop-up message indicating that you first need to go to the target board, add sub-items. So, you'd have to stop what you were doing and move to that board and add them. So say I want to, move session 1 to the event RSVP process. I don't have any sub-items on this board yet. So I'd have to come over here, add a sub-item, make sure it had the same exact column structure as over here. And that just really is time consuming and threw a wrench in your workflow. We definitely understand. So now you'll simply just map the sub item before you move it, just as you do with the parent item. And you'll have the option to add any sub item columns that are missing in the destination board right from the mapping pop-up. So I'm going to go to the vendors group here. I'm going to move the item vendor 4, which has a sub item on it, as you can see, and it has a files column. So I'm going to move the parent item. So say that you have a vendor point of contact who needs to be added to the guest list over here, the RSVP list, because they'll be present at the event. So we can move that vendor over to the RSVP board and create a sub item with the sub items column. So let's go ahead and go to move to board, move to event RSVP process, and we're going to move it to the group called vendors RSVP. And so as I mentioned, you'll see this mapping pop-up come up. We're not going to worry about the parent item columns right now because the sub item columns are what I'm demoing. So you'll see that the sub items columns are mapped so that owner is mapped to the owner column, the status column is mapped to the status column, the due date is mapped to the due date column. But what about files? We don't have a files column yet in the sub items over on that target board. So it'll let me know there are no columns of this type. Manually create this column. And I'm going to say, I need to zoom my screen out a little bit here, sorry. So I'm going to say add as a new column. And a column was successfully created in the destination board, a files column. So now I can move the item. Again, these are column data. This is column data from the parent item. I'm not going to worry about that right now because that's not what I'm demoing. So I'm going to move the items anyway. And now we zoom back in over here on the RSVP process board. My item has come over with a sub item and the owner, status, date, and files column. So we think this is a super cool feature. It definitely prevents you from having to stop what you're doing, move between boards. You can do it all right from this board with the mapping pop-up. Okay, let's move on to customizing the email address to send emails to board. You requested it, and we are excited to reintroduce customizing the email to board email addresses. So since updating the format of the email address for the email to board feature, we haven't allowed you to customize the unique email address of your board. Many of you really miss this functionality, so now we provide both options. So if you're not familiar with the email to board feature, if you go into board settings and click create items via email, a secure address is automatically generated for you that contains your unique API key. This allows you to use this email address to send items to the board via email. This is super helpful if you have like event planners who are out in the field and they want to send items to the board without physically being on the board. You can send an email to that unique email address that I just showed, and an item will appear here on your board. So as we continue to keep your account security at the forefront, we still wanted you to be able to use either address if you need to. So again, if you click on board settings and create items via email, you'll find the secure address as well as a customizable address. I can change this to whatever I need to. So maybe I want it to be like field team at emilyclifton.monday.com. So again, this is useful for members of the team out in the field. So perhaps like at a venue walkthrough or a catering tasting, and they realize that an item needs to be added to the planning task board. They can do it by just sending an email to this email address, and an item will be created on the board. So please note that this custom email address can only be used by account members, and it tells you here. The system will recognize the user by their email address and compare it to the secured address that's already on file for that specific user. So again, it has to be a user from your account, whereas the secure address can be used by people outside of the account. In addition, different roles on the account will have different permissions for this feature, and admins will be able to customize that in the permissions of each board address. And that wraps up our new features webinar for work management. Now let's take a look at an exciting update for those of you using the Monday Sales CRM product. I'm going to jump back to my webinar, to my slideshow here. Okay. The mobile CRM experience. So for those of you using the CRM product, you're probably familiar with all of our main entities, such as contacts, leads, accounts, and deals. But if you're not using the CRM product, these entities are pre-built workflows that can help your team manage sales pipelines, centralize communication with clients, and automate processes like lead tracking. It's a really cool product. You can trial it if you want to. We do offer a free sales CRM trial, but we're super excited to announce that you can now take the power of the Monday CRM product on the go with our mobile CRM experience. The mobile CRM includes all of our main entities, which, as I mentioned earlier, are contacts, leads, accounts, and deals. Additionally, our long-awaited feature on mobile, emails and activities, will also be available on the mobile CRM experience. So on the mobile CRM, you'll be able to quickly find and call contacts straight from the convenient interface, which you're seeing an example of here in the GIF or GIF. I know there's like hot debate over whether it's pronounced GIF or GIF. I say GIF. So as you're seeing in this GIF here, you'll be able to quickly find and call contacts, which is great for sales teams in the field or on the go. And in addition to these contacts at your fingertips, you can easily click between accounts, leads, and deals. You can communicate with your clients via email or other activities and record it in the emails and activities app, which has previously not been available on mobile. And if you're curious to learn more about the Emails and Activities app, you can check out our knowledge base article, which walks you through kind of what the benefits are for using that and how to set it up. So we know that many users have been asking for mobile access of this feature because, like I said, it hasn't been available on mobile yet, but we're excited that it's finally available for your use. The mobile CRM experience will be available on the mobile app for all paying users of the CRM product. So if you're just trialing it, you won't be able to see it on mobile just yet. But if you do add it to your plan, or already have it added to your plan, you'll just need to ensure that you're using the most recent and up-to-date version of the app. Cool. So we're super excited about that. We hope you are too. Okay. This completes the new features and improvements part of our session, and we'll be moving into the Q&A shortly. So if you haven't had a chance, please be sure to add your questions to the Q&A box specifically. Again, if you're just joining us, or if you joined us a little late, I will not be pulling questions from the chat box. I will be pulling them specifically from the Q&A box. So you should see both a chat and a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Make sure you've dropped into Q&A. That's what I'm pulling from. I'm just going to grab another quick sip of water, and then we will jump right in. Okay, taking a look at all of your amazing questions. And again, thank you so much to Amelia and Katie, my colleagues, who have been helping me keep it rolling in the Q&A and chat today. All right, just going to pull a couple of questions and we'll get right to it. All right, so I definitely see a question trend about people wanting to know if the mute board notifications feature will impact automation and integration emails as well. That is a great question. So again, this is the mute board notification settings. Mute all means you won't receive any notifications. Mentioned and assigned means you'll only receive notifications when mentioned or assigned, or receive all. Yeah, if you have an automation set up or an integration set up that says something like, you know, when status changes to done, notify the person in the people column. If you're that person in the people column or in the owner column and the status changes to done, if you have the board muted, you will not receive that notification. So if you are wanting to receive notifications when you are mentioned or assigned, then I would probably set this setting instead of the mute all, because that mute board feature will impact any automations or integrations that you have set up on the board. So great question. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? Okay. All right, I'm seeing a lot of Kanban questions. I'm seeing a lot of Google Calendar questions. Just trying to choose the best one here to review. All right, does the Google Calendar integration work with calendars that are not your main account calendar? So for example, my company uses multiple calendars, so I might need to sync Monday events to our shared Google Events calendar, not my personal Google Calendar. Okay. No. So the Google Calendar integration will integrate with your personal calendar. And if you have other calendars, like, so for example, I have like a birthdays calendar, reminders calendar, tasks and vacations calendar, as well as my monday.com demos and holidays calendars. It will not sync with any of those. It will sync with the main one. So my Emily calendar right here, which is what you're seeing. Oh, and look, by the way, my automation's finally, or my integration finally fired. And now you're seeing concept 5, which is the all day event between the 2nd and 4th. And then concept 6, which is the all day event on Friday the 7th. Those were the ones that didn't fire right away earlier, but now they're there. So anyway, they will show up on my Emily calendar. So if you're wanting to integrate, say, like the vacations calendar, which is like a shared calendar between everyone, you would need to make that like your main calendar, and then it would show up there. So no, it cannot be shared calendars. It has to be your main personal calendar. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I see a trend of people asking if the move sub-items feature would apply to copying sub-items. Let's see. Copying sub-items. I'm not exactly sure what we mean by copying sub-items here, but let's see. Let's just test it out. If you mean like duplicating a sub-item, yeah, it'll duplicate it with all of the same columns. So that shouldn't be an issue there. But if that's not the exact question that you're asking, or if that, isn't a clear explanation, feel free to write in to support@monday.com and we can get your question answered more specifically. Okay, let's see. Okay, I see a couple of people requesting specific things that should be able to be recovered from the recycle bin. We definitely hear you. We heard you in the case of, sub-item columns being able to be accessed in the recycle bin. So keep an eye on new feature improvements in the future. We definitely are hoping to have more things available that you can recover from the recycle bin, such as work docs and things like that. Okay. Let's see. What else? Is there a functionality being developed that would automatically match the sub-item columns to the columns of the board at large? Okay, that is a great question. So I think you're asking, like when I created a sub-item on the board, could it automatically have the same columns as the parent item? So like concept 2 has owner, start date, end date, budget spent, status, campaign channels, etc. When I made a sub-item, could it automatically have the same column? So owner, start date, end date, etc. Whereas like now when I make it, it just has owner, status, and due date. That's a great question. I'm currently not sure if that's on, our roadmap or not, but I can definitely pass along that suggestion as a feature request. And I think that would be a great addition to the sub-items. Okay, what else? Okay, this actually might clarify the question that we asked earlier, that I was demonstrating earlier, which is, can you copy sub-items and move to other existing parent items? So that clarifies a little bit, but I saw a couple of people asking this question. So I think what you're wondering is like, can you copy the sub item, which yes, you can. I just showed that, and then move it to another existing parent item. So say I want this sub item to go to concept 3 instead of being under concept 2. And yes, you can absolutely do that. You can click on this button, go to move to, and then choose another parent item for it to move to. So I want it to move to concept 3, and it just did. So now you'll see that sub item copy we just made is now under concept 3. This is great if all of your sub items are the same for each item. So like here, for example, for session 1, we needed to brainstorm, write the rough draft, create the slide deck, and run through the breakout session. Well, we obviously also have to do that for session 2 and 3. So all I need to do here is just select all, select duplicate, and now they're duplicated and automatically selected. I just go to move to. I'm going to move these 4 sub items to session 2. And there they are. And I can do the same for session 3. Hopefully that clarifies. Again, if I'm not answering the exact question that you're asking, feel free to write into us and we'll get you a more specific answer. Okay. Great. Let's see. Can you use the Kanban view for sub items if there are date columns in the sub items? Let's give that a try. Let's try using the Kanban view. I'm not sure if the Kanban view supports sub items or not, but let's give it a try. Okay. Let's first add a date to the sub item. We'll just do tomorrow, August 25th. Now I'm going to go to Kanban. Let's see. That status was content. Okay. And yes, it looks like you can choose sub item card columns. Go to status. Let's see. It looks like I have to expand. Looks like I have to go to the item and expand the sub item in order to see the sub item's status. So it won't create its own like group here. So like there's not like a content group, but I am still able to expand the sub item to see the status of the relevant sub item to the parent item. All right, thank you for bearing with me while I tested that because I actually was not 100% sure. Okay, great. Okay. Looking for some more questions to answer. Is customizing the board address also available outside the US? It should be, yeah, it actually should be. Like you might be asking about like GDPR, like EU restrictions. I do believe that the email to board or create items via email feature, I believe this customized address will be available in the EU or outside of the US. If it's not, for whatever reason, you can write into us and, you know, the subject line something like, you know, GDPR, whatever it is, and our security team will answer that for you because I do believe that you'll have the option to choose both this one or this one outside of the US. But again, if you find for whatever reason that that's not the case for you and you are outside of the US, let us know. We can get that addressed for you. All right. Will custom emails for individual pulses be reintroduced? Not sure about that one. So I think you're talking about like when you go to the updates section here on a specific pulse or item and then write updates via email. Right now, your option still is this like randomly generated email address. Right now, we're not reintroducing an option to customize this, but happy to pass that feedback along. We definitely know that a lot of people had like significant frustrations with the create items via email address no longer being available to customize. So we brought that back because of your feedback. So keep sharing that feedback with us. It's super helpful. We, read and consider every piece of feedback that we're given. Our product team carefully considers it as they plan and implement future platform improvements. And really, like many of our most important features and feature improvements come directly from user feedback. So send that along to us at any time. You can also, I want to mention this quickly with just a few minutes left together. You can go here to this help center by clicking on the question mark. And here you can find our knowledge base, like our most popular topics, the community.monday that I mentioned before, and you can contact us here and submit an idea for a new feature or feature improvement. This will take you to the community where you'll be able to submit that. Okay, and you can also visit support.monday.com and search our knowledge base, as well as see video tutorials, find end-to-end solutions for different industries. Again, find that community forum, sign up for webinars like the one you're in right now, see other interesting use cases, and as always, contact us. So again, you can find all of that by clicking the question mark here to find our help center, find a lot of self-service options, and then if you need to contact us, call, write, or chat. Okay, great. I'm going to answer one more question before we wrap up today. Let's see. Oh, here's a good question. Okay, so someone says, I was looking at the current boards we have and I don't see that option yet. Do I need to add it? So I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about, like which feature I've mentioned. But if you see a feature that I mentioned today and you don't have it yet, first of all, you can go to Monday Labs to turn on that board notification settings to mute board notifications that I mentioned. You'll just need to activate that. And if you see a feature that I mentioned that you don't have yet, feel free to write into us. It may be something that isn't 100% rolled out yet, but it's like 70% of the way there. And you should be getting that soon. It may be something that we need to grant to you from the back end, or it may be something that's only available on a plan that you might not have. So for example, it might only be available on the Pro plan, or if you're an enterprise account, we might need to check in with your account manager first before granting that feature. There are a few different ways it could go. So if you see a feature I mentioned here today, you don't have it, please write into us, support@monday.com, and we'll see what we can do for you. Okay, well, wow, that hour flew by. It was so great talking to you all, showing you these new exciting features and improvements. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, we're here for you 24/7. If you have any questions, you can write or chat us, and you can look in the knowledge base. And if you don't find the answer there, let us know. But thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this time together. And again, this recording will be available within just a few business days. So keep an eye out for that. All right. Thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye.